Hi, welcome to the She Moves Mountains podcast. This is your host, Kamala Murphy. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about some of the juicy stuff we women experience that makes this life journey truly amazing. You know, the nitty-gritty, the love, the loss, the falling down and rising up, the getting lost and finding our way again. To our hearts, our happiness, and to the awareness that we can and do move mountains. Thank you for joining. Well, welcome everyone to the She Moves Mountains podcast. This is your host, Kamala Murphy. I want to thank you for joining us today as we talk about some of the juicy stuff that we women experience making this life journey truly amazing. You know, the nitty-gritty, the ups and downs, the falling down, the rising up, all of that, you know, getting lost and finding our way again so that we can finally own really being amazing. And today I'm really excited to have Cynthia Clark with us. I've met her recently at the New Media Summit podcasting event and just had so much fun talking with her and connecting with her. Even being on her podcast recently. So that's really exciting. So I'm really excited about speaking with her today and having her share her wisdom and her experience with you. Before we do that, as always, I like to share just a brief little message. Today is a quote from Maya Angelou, and it seems especially significant for those of us who are moving mountains, who are doing things that are a little out of the ordinary. This is by Maya. If you are always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you are. And every time I read that, I just get a little chill because it's just so important, because so many of us try to fit that normal range, and then we lose out, and so does the world. So I'm inviting all of you to take a gentle deep breath as we just really relax and welcome the energy that Cynthia is bringing as I share with you a little bit about Cynthia and her journey. Cynthia is a palm reading consultant and compatibility expert. She has assisted over 7,000 individuals to find their life purpose and their relationship clarity since 2008. And she's the author of Stories in Your Hands, Discover the Authentic Destiny, Your Authentic Destiny, using Palmistry and Tarot. She's created the soulmate code system using Palmistry. So that's really exciting. It's like, ooh, more please, more please. And she has been an entrepreneur since she was 24 and had a deja vu experience, which led her to study palmistry. And that's something I really want to go into. It's like any of that mystical stuff. It's like, ooh, let's find out more about that. She's gone through her own healing journey after divorcing her first husband, and has healed and rebounded, and eventually finding and marrying the man of her dreams, her soulmate. She enjoys using the validity and usefulness of palmistry, getting a feel for that, and metaphysical studies to transform clients' blocks, bring clarity, and help them move into joy. So I'd really like to welcome Cynthia Clark to our call today. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here with you. Yeah. And really great connecting with you at the summit. That really was such an amazing event.
Yes.
So many awesome people there.
Right. Yeah. And for me, it was a new world. And so it was like, oh, it's so fascinating to meet all these new people and get the new energies, what's coming up in the world. So, so I'm really just thrilled to have you on this podcast with us, because there's something about the study of the palms and palmistry and what it all means. And I was wondering, well, actually, before we do that, just to have you share a little bit of some of your moving mountains experiences, because I know that you shared a little bit with me about what you've gone through, and having a marriage that fell apart, but it was clearly not the one that you were meant for, and the strength that it took, what you needed to experience and how you needed to grow to go through all of that. So if there's anything that you wanted to share about your own life journey, and I want to hear too about the deja vu experience.
Sure. Yeah. So I was married for 19 years, which is quite a long time by anyone's standards, I think. And I was, that marriage was good. A lot of it was actually very, very good. I was not abused, or, I wasn't with a person who wasn't a good person or anything like that. He was actually a really great person. But depression can change a person quite significantly. And my ex-husband was suffering from depression, and it was slowly pulling me down into this hole with him, and I just didn't know what to do about it. Because I'm such an optimistic person, and I always see the grass everywhere as green, yeah. Even when it's obviously not and needs watering. So that's, I think that's a Sagittarius trait, by the way. Just that optimism comes through. And anyway, so I tried to adapt to his needs, and I basically uprooted myself to Idaho. I come from Salt Lake City, Utah originally, and I was actually thriving in my business at the time. And he just wanted to move. He's like, I can't live in here anymore. I hate the big city and I just want to leave. And so after quite a few months, I finally said, okay, let's move. And so we moved up to Idaho, which for me was a total disaster. It just was not a good place for my work. I didn't find people I resonated with. I felt like I was a total outcast. I was called a witch. When I called the city, this was Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, I called the city to get my business license. The first thing they told me was, I think what you're doing is illegal. I'm going to have to check the records on that.
Wow.
And I'm like, palm reading is illegal in your city? Are you kidding me? In the 2000s?
Wow.
He double checked it and found out that it was actually legal. But I mean, this was the kind of response I got pretty much everywhere I went in Idaho. And it was just so closed. The society was just like so closed, and they were not open to palm reading whatsoever. So, and I thought, well, okay. And I'm going to make this work. So I ended up going to Spokane, which if anybody looks on a map, you'll see that that's like 30 minutes away from Coeur d'Alene. It's cross state lines, but it's like super close. And I did end up finding a nice place to work out of. It was an artist collective. I found an astrologer who was running this artist collective. She was totally amazing and very welcoming. And I ended up working there for a few months, which turned out to be, not so bad. And I met a few people up there who were super, super nice. but still the overall energy was very difficult.
Right.
And the other challenge that I found just being so far north, and no offense to Northerners, by the way, I love all parts of the United States, and I'm actually half Canadian as well. So my mom's from Alberta.
Ah.
But anyway, I find the north to be just not sunny enough. The sun doesn't shine very strong. So even in the middle of summer, like you're in the sun and the sun is out and it's beautiful, but the sun doesn't have any power up there. It's like it just doesn't penetrate your skin or something. I don't know. It was just so strange. Because for me, like being from Salt Lake City, the sun is hot.
Right.
Like you're outside, the sun will burn you pretty badly. Which, I don't know, it was interesting. So after 7 months, it was like, okay, I got to get out of here. I just couldn't stand it. And I meditated on where to go next. And I ended up opening up a map of the United States. And I didn't know if my husband was going to come with me or not at this time. Colorado felt really strong to me. And it's like, I'm going to Colorado. Like, I don't know where you're going, but I'm going to Colorado.
Right.
And, we ended up going together, and we moved to Aspen, which is a beautiful place. It's up in the mountains. It's over 8,000 feet in the mountains. So the sun is actually quite penetrating there, even though it's winter 9 months out of the year.
Yeah.
Which you would think is like, seriously, like you want it to be in a sunnier place, and yet you go to like a winter place.
A winter place.
It was strange, and yet that's how it worked out.
Right. And somehow I don't think that's so good for an optimist. It's like, I think we need sun, right?
Right. Well, and Aspen is super sunny when it's sunny. So yeah, I mean, it actually is quite beautiful. It snows and then the sun comes out and it's absolutely gorgeous. So, but it's cold. So yeah, it's definitely a cold place to live. So anyway, I ended up living there for 7 years.
Wow.
And it's a lovely city. I definitely love the mountains. I love everything about Colorado as far as like just the natural, being amongst the deer and the foxes and the bears, like there's something special about that. But my marriage fell apart there. So, I thought I was, okay, I'm going to do everything I can do to make it work. And then it ended up just being more and more obvious that it wasn't the location. The depression was coming from inside, and if you can't fix that, then it doesn't matter where you live.
Right.
So the hardest thing I ever did in my entire life, and I still believe this to this day, was actually leaving that marriage. Because I still loved my husband, and I loved, like, I saw his potential, because, reading hands, I see potential.
Right.
So I knew I could see his genius. I could see his, inner beauty. I could see everything that I wanted him to see for himself. And he couldn't see it. And it was just, it was so difficult.
Yeah.
But I pulled it off, and I luckily had a place to go because I was living in an RV at the time. And so I basically was like homeless, which is not too easy, but I had a really terrific psychic medium friend who actually let me stay with her for a little bit of time until I found another place to live. So she was really my rock during that period.
Right. Awesome. So, yeah.
So anyway, I went through all that and came out the other side, and now I'm happily remarried, and I met my husband in Aspen. He's actually grew up in Aspen. And I now know that's why I needed to go there.
Interesting. Yeah.
I thought it was for the skiing. It turns out it wasn't.
Well, I think that's one of the things about when we talk about moving mountains and doing the things that are out of our comfort zones, doing the things that are not necessarily the traditional. Sometimes we just know that there's something more that we have to do, and it sounds like, doing the relocations and testing that out, and just finally knowing it isn't about the location, and there's something that's not, this person that I love and care about has these genius markings, or this genius to him, and there's only so much we can do if our loved one can't see their magnificence. Sometimes we just can't make them see. So
right. Yeah, and I tried. I kept it together for 19 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't take divorce lightly. I don't,
Right.
Leaving a relationship lightly at all. But sometimes that is what you got to do.
Right. Because there's something else calling us, something bigger that we're meant for. So
yeah. And now I look back on it, and I know I went through all of that in order to have the perspective I have, in order to help people.
Yes.
So that's, it's all appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It all works out one way or the other, right? Yeah. So just because I'm geeky this way, I would love to hear about I definitely want to go into the palmistry, and especially you had mentioned the gift markers and the ways that we can find out if we're intuitive or not. But the geeky part wants to know about the deja vu experience that led you to palmistry and hand reading.
So yeah, deja vu is not something that happens every day, certainly. And to me, it had never happened before. And so I ran a restaurant actually with my husband for 7 years, my ex-husband, down in southern Utah, and we sold it and moved back to Salt Lake City. And I was basically retired from the restaurant business, and I was in between jobs, and I didn't know, what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And the universe is always trying to tell us things.
Will we listen, though?
Yes, if we're paying attention. And so I personally get a lot of information from reading and books. And I love to read, and I love to learn new things, and that's just part of my nature. So I went to the library one day in Salt Lake City, and I had no idea what I was going to check out. I was literally wandering the aisles, just walking up and down the aisles and kind of glancing at different categories and different books and, stuff like that. And I ended in front of the metaphysical section. And there were some books on astrology, books on dreams, books on, all these juicy topics, which I love. But there was a book on palmistry that I ended up picking up. And I had never studied palmistry before. And I was probably like a lot of people in that I was a little bit skeptical. And I thought, I don't know that there's really anything to this, seems kind of hokey. But I was like being persisted, like, hey, you should just check this book out. That's why you're at the library.
Right.
Check out a book. So I took this book home, and I actually ignored all the other books on the shelf. And that was the only book I checked out. And it turns out, like, as soon as I started to read it, I opened it up and I'm starting to read it. And I'm like, wow, this is so familiar. And I started to read a little bit more, and I was like, I've read this before. And I was literally remembering reading this book that I had never touched before. And I started to get these chills, and it was like, not only had I read it before, but it felt to me like it was a past life connection. Like I was starting to get these images of France, I think I definitely have a past life connection to France. And it was just so profound. And it's like, I had this strong kind of intuitive message come in saying, you need to study this again. And you better get busy.
Wow. Wow.
Like, okay, I better get busy. So then I'm like, okay, I'm learning all these new things. I have no idea what I'm doing. I started to test it out on people. So I tested, of course, on my husband. I'm like, hey, can I read some stuff on your hands? I'm reading this book and let me know what you think. And if this rings true for you. And that was really, so I literally started testing the material. And I did it with friends and family and just people, that I was in connection with. And the response was so overwhelmingly positive. I was not expecting that. A lot of people, especially now that I've read over 7,000 people, some people I'll meet and they'll literally hide their hands behind their back. Like, oh, you're a palm reader. Oh my gosh. And they don't want me to know anything about them whatsoever.
Right.
But quite a few people will just open up their hands and go, oh, tell me, what do you see? And so I get both responses now.
Yes.
Obviously. But at the time where I was just learning, the response was so positive. Everybody was like, how did you know that? Wow, that's so accurate. How did you know that? I want to know more. Can you tell me anything else? And it was just amazing. And I was like, well, I'm just learning. I don't really know that much. And
yet
I did. And it was sort of like it was getting reactivated in me.
Yes.
And it was like, it's sort of like picking up a language. And that's really how I look at palm reading. Palm reading is a language. And, once you start to study a language, it can be very awkward at first.
Right.
Like I actually minored in French. So, when I started learning French, it was like, okay, I barely know a couple of words. But then as you start to use it and you start to work with it, it's like, oh, it sort of makes sense. And then you start to pick stuff up and people speak to you and you can understand things. And you're like, well, okay, yeah, I don't know how this works, but I'm piecing it all together.
Right.
And palmistry is very much like that. So it was an activation, but I also did a lot of formal training and study. So it wasn't, it's like learning anything really. If you want to be good at it, you dive into it and you learn as much as you can from other masters and also from your own intuition. And from actually using it and practicing it on people, because you will get the response and you'll know right away whether it resonates with them or not.
Right, exactly.
And if it doesn't, well, throw it out. Maybe it's not accurate. And that's basically how I got started. I started reading a bunch of different books and I started sorting through the material because some material is totally outdated and not accurate in my opinion. And some information is so incredibly accurate and useful that it's like, wow, why doesn't everybody know this?
Right.
So that's kind of where I just got my experience. I'd say probably the first 500 pairs of hands were like that.
Okay. I was just curious, did you have a sort of a bent towards spiritual things prior to picking up this book, or was it sort of out of the blue?
I would say yes, with an asterisk.
Okay.
I have a business degree.
Okay.
So very practical. I'm super practical. And I grew up in a very practical family of computer scientists. My two brothers are both computer programmers. My sister is also very analytical. She's an archivist. And so she studies, old books and things like that.
Right.
And she's really, really intelligent. She graduated magna cum laude in college and she was always straight A's. And then there was me. I was also straight A's for the most part. And I have a Mormon background.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up in Utah, I was raised as a Mormon, but I left the church when I was about 15, which is pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because of my Sagittarius nature of freedom, and I felt so restricted.
Right. Right.
I don't want to be restricted. And I was super curious about other ways of existing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that I studied a little bit of other religions, but really I was on my own pathway of studying, what does God mean to me, and what does spirituality mean to me? And I've kind of just developed my own way of looking at the world over this amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah, I would say it probably did start when I was pretty young, now that you mention it. And I had always been interested in astrology and, numerology and dreams and,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. That's a very mystical kind of stuff.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I was also somewhat skeptical. And, I actually studied astronomy when I was a kid. And I belonged to the Salt Lake Astronomical Society. And I used to run a telescope for star parties. And that was when I was a teenager. And so I was interested in the cosmos.
Right.
I was interested in what? There is something so much more out there than we're aware of.
Right.
And that, I think that time of my life was really fun because, it's like, wow, okay, you're looking at something in the sky. Like one of my favorites is the Orion Nebula, which is visible in the Northern Hemisphere in the winter, of course, next to the constellation Orion. And to look at it through a really high-powered telescope is so amazing because you realize, wow, this is where stars are being born.
Wow.
How cool is that? And you can see it.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me. And then it makes you feel like, wow, we're really small.
Small. Yeah.
We're just this one little ordinary planet revolving around this ordinary star. Our sun is kind of a garden variety star. Nothing really special about it. And yet, here we have our beautiful planet, which is absolutely spectacular. And to think that we're the only thing out there is just ridiculous to me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're not the only thing out there.
Yeah. How could we be if there's this immense cosmos, it's an immense cosmos.
It's completely ludicrous to think that we're the only thing out there.
Right.
I mean, that's insane. That's just such narrow thinking.
Yeah.
Go out and look at the stars for one evening and you will realize that there's so much out there.
Right.
And
that just gives me chills.
Yeah, and I actually went to the Eclipse here in the United States back in 2017. It was my total solar eclipse. I had tried to go to some other ones, but the timing didn't work out, and you really got to plan something like that. And I went on to the center line, and we went into Wyoming, this really tiny little town in Wyoming, basically a freeway exit. And it's a little north of Laramie, Wyoming. And we were there with probably 20,000 other people.
Wow.
Which was amazing. And for anybody who's never seen a total solar eclipse, you absolutely must do it at least once in your lifetime. Because it was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had.
Wow.
It totally humbling for me. And now I'm going to turn into an eclipse chaser, I think.
Is that in your hands?
Well, not specifically. But yeah, I mean, the crickets started coming out. The crickets were singing, literally as the sun was getting, covered. The dogs there started barking. We were there with like 20,000 people were there. It was so amazing. And we're all just like, as a little family, even though there's so many people, it was like a little family.
Yeah.
We were all experiencing it together. And it was just so amazing.
That's great.
Like, wow, what a way to like connect with the planet, connect with the cosmos, connect with the people there. It was truly magical.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yes. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, by the way.
Well, we're just sort of going with the flow, although I really do want to talk about intuition and gift markers. So I was thinking, I'd kind of like to know, what are some of the really common gift markers that our audience or my audience would possibly have? Like, I know that they're intuitive for the most part. There's a spiritual bent, and they know they have a calling, but may not be sure about what that is. So I'm pretty clear about that. And there's this sense of wanting to move mountains, that there's something that they are here for. So there may be some common markers that they might be looking for or not. I don't know. I'll ask you.
Okay, sounds good. There's a lot of markers.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, so just first off, people need to understand that your hands reflect you.
Yes.
Okay, so you can think of your hands like a mirror. Okay, it's like holding up your mirror of, this is me. Okay, and it's reflecting all sorts of stuff. Okay, so there are three aspects to palmistry, first of all, which is why most people think of like the lifeline and the love line and the marriage lines and all this stuff. And
right,
it's like,
right.
There's
headline, heartline, those things. Lifeline, yeah.
There's so much more to palmistry. Okay, there is, first of all, your fingerprints, which form 5 months before you're born. They never change. They represent your soul imprint. So when you think about coming into this world, coming into this body, you came in with a plan. And your plan is embedded in your 10 unique fingerprints. So when we read the 10 fingerprints, we find out, okay, what is your soul's agenda? What is it that you want to experience in this lifetime? What is your major lesson that you're working on? In other words, your opportunity to grow. And what are the glasses that you wear as you go through life? Because we wear different lenses. So that's part one. Part two is your hand shape, which forms by the time you're about 6 years old. So when you think about being a little baby to being 6 years old, you're completely in your subconscious mind and you're absorbing everything around you.
Yeah.
That is going to create your personality, what we call your personality. And we call that an archetype. Okay, so I call that a hand shape archetype, which is also where your soulmate archetype comes in. Okay, so that's how I read that. And then we've got everything else in your hands. The lines represent rivers of energy. Okay, so they ebb and flow, and they basically mimic the neural pathways of the brain. So when you think about, how you respond to stress, when you think about how are you thinking, how are you feeling, how are you, what kind of people are in your life and how do you respond to that? What type of job do you have and how do you respond to that? That's going to show up in your lines, and they absolutely change, which is why length of life is not in your hands. Okay. A lot of people think that is something that's in your hands. It's not. However, health and how your constitution and that sort of thing is in your hands, but you can totally strengthen all of these things. And you can react differently. You can think differently. You have free will. So that's basically the changeable part of your hand. It's the free will. Now, one of the things that you can see is talents and intuition, like you were wanting to talk about.
Right.
So intuition, you may have an innate intuition. Okay. In other words, you came in very intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a marker called the loop of intuition. It's a Palmer print, meaning that it forms 5 months before you're born. It's with you for your entire lifetime. Okay. And that's going to be located in Luna, which is down here, the very far part of the hand. Okay. That's called your Luna mount. And you could have a print that looks like a fingerprint pattern. It's either going to form a loop here that kind of comes into that section of the palm, or it's going to be a circle, like a whirl, like, almost like a hurricane. Like, think of the eye of the hurricane.
Right, right.
You may have a marker there that we just call the Luna whirl. Okay, so that would be a permanent marker. You may also have a temporary or developed marker, which would be called the just a Luna star. Okay, so stars, a lot of people have heard of in the hands. By the way, some stars are not positive. Some stars are actually kind of destructive.
Oh.
And some stars are talent markers, like this one, the Luna star, which would show up in Luna as well. And it would be like a little Star of David. So like a set of lines crisscrossing.
Right, right.
Okay, so it looks like a little starburst or an asterisk, like that. And it would show up in this section of your hand. Okay, so Luna.
And either hand? Or
either hand, yeah,
okay.
either hand. And this would represent, of course, Luna being your realm of your subconscious. Okay, so when you have these markers, it is literally accentuating your subconscious. And it's giving you like bursts of intuition. Okay, so you will see that little star in people who are quite intuitive. Now, if it's on your passive hand versus your active hand.
Okay, and which is so you're dominant, and it could be either one?
Yes. Okay. So, for example, if you write with your right hand, your right hand is your active hand usually. Okay. But for Palmer prints, remember, these form 5 months before birth, so it doesn't matter for the Palmer print,
right?
On either hand. But for the minor markings, which would be the star, if you see the star on your passive hand and not your active hand, it shows that it's something you could develop more, and maybe it's not developed yet. Okay. If it's already on your active hand, it's like, oh no, it's ready to go. It's needs to be used. And by the way, talent markers always, always, always want to be used. So if you learn about your talent markers, which by the way, there's probably about 30 of them, then you need to use them. Right, right. So another one is called the bow of intuition. That's tied in with a line called the Mercury line. Okay, so the Mercury line, by the way, if you look at a lot of palmistry books, they call this the health line. That's a bunch of crap. Okay. That's not accurate whatsoever. The Mercury line really is all about how well are you listening to your inner voice. So not everybody even has a Mercury line, by the way, because not everybody is interested in this sort of thing. Okay, doesn't mean they're not intuitive. They're just not paying attention, or it's not a focus for them. Right, right. So, which is fine. Everybody's got their own pathway, but it's going to be kind of a diagonal line. It goes from your Mercury finger, which is your little finger, and it goes down towards the center part of your palm. And it may actually touch your lifeline. It may not. But you want to just check the clarity of that line. So if it's long and straight and clear, that shows that you're really tuned in and you're listening to that inner voice or intuition. And by the way, this line could either be straight, like it is on my hand. I don't know if you can see that. It's straight, or it could bend, which would be then called the bow of intuition. Oh, okay. It would actually come around and it would swerve into Luna like just sort of a half circle. Okay, so it could show up either way. It could also be broken, which means you got a little bit of work to do. Again, it's kind of just verifies like, oh yeah, yes, this could be developed more. Or it could be missing, but again, lines can appear or disappear based upon your focus.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another place to check. Another
may I interrupt you for just a moment here?
Yes.
Does it, I'm sorry, this with the right and left, or the active and the passive hand, does it matter? Shoot, I think I've got them on both hands. But does it matter which hand it shows up on?
Well, it's always good to pay attention to both hands just to see like what level of development you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if it's clear on both hands, then chances are you've had this developed for a long time.
Okay.
It was something that was kind of innate, and you're that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's only clear on your active hand, that's okay too, because that shows you're developing it. It's something you've worked on. It shows the progress you've made in your life.
Okay.
So yeah, it's good.
Okay.
But yeah, it's possible to only have it on one hand, and that's okay too.
Okay.
But yeah, it just brings in clarity.
Thank you.
Yes. Another place to check a talent marker, I call this the Ring of Solomon. And the Ring of Solomon, of course, was named after King Solomon, who was considered a wise king.
Yes.
And this marker would wrap around your index finger. Okay, so it literally circles the finger. That's why it's called a ring.
Mm-hmm.
And you may even have more than one Ring of Solomon. Some people have 2 or 3 that wrap around that finger.
Huh.
And that shows emotional intelligence. Okay, so it's somebody who's empathic. And they can literally tune into other people's feelings. They know how other people are feeling, and they can use that to in various healing ways. So the Ring of Solomon is a great little marker. It can be, of course, challenging. All markers come with responsibility, of course.
Right.
If you're empathic, it's like, well, how do I know if it's my feelings or someone else's?
Right.
And what if I don't want those feelings?
Yes, exactly.
I'd like to get rid of them. So it can sometimes feel like a burden. And of course, there are ways when I work with people, it's like, okay, let's look at your talent markers and let's actually work with them in a positive way. And, you can train yourself to use your gifts in the best way possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that's a great little marker there. There's also what we call droplets, or water droplets is another easy way to tell how intuitive you are. So this would be on your fingertips.
Okay.
If you kind of turn your fingertips sort of sideways like this, and you just look at this upper section of your finger, so opposite your fingernail, and some people will have these little sort of bulges. They look like little, like extra flesh.
Okay.
So they call those droplets.
All right.
That's another intuition marker. And chances are you've probably had those for a long time if you have them. Definitely.
I used to have one that I thought was because a hamster bit me, but I don't think it was. Like,
Yeah. And another really super easy way to tell if you're intuitive is just how soft is your skin. Okay, so there's literally 4 kinds of skin texture. Okay, and people who have very, very soft skin, or what we call the thin skin, like literally thin skin, they are going to be more intuitive. So literally stuff comes in easier for them. And it can be, again, somewhat burdensome to have really thin skin because you're going to be super sensitive.
Right.
And it's like, oh, we got to deal with that.
Yes.
In our environment we call Earth.
Right.
So sometimes that can be challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah, thin skin people definitely are very, very sensitive people.
Yes. Well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool. All right. So I'm looking at all this and thinking, Gee, I wish you were right here. And what I didn't mention is that Cynthia's in Sedona. So those of you who are in the Sedona area can.
Yes. Although I work with people worldwide.
Sure.
All I need is a good digital photo of your hand. And if you happen to not have a digital camera, or usually your phone is good enough to take a good picture.
Really?
Yeah, most people, especially the new iPhones, have amazing like pixels.
Oh, awesome.
They do fantastic.
So no more ink rollers and.
Well, if you don't have that, I can send out a kit. And I do get my kits from the police. So, it's like a pre-inked paper that you can peel apart and you can ink yourself. It's actually really cool.
Yeah.
It's old school technology.
Right.
But it works equally well. So I can read from a print or a scan or a picture, any of those things work. Yeah. And then, of course, if I meet you in person, I love to ink you with my ink.
Right.
Yeah, I like to keep records because it can change.
Right.
It's great to track changes. I've tracked a few people over 10 years now. Really fun.
Yeah, I can imagine, because if the lines do change and their energies change, like you say, the prints don't change, but the lines can. So
absolutely.
That must be kind of fascinating to see how people evolve.
Yeah, for sure. And it's fun to talk to people about where they are in their lives and what's been changing in their lives. And then to literally see it reflecting in their hands.
Yeah.
Is so awesome.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really neat. Hands are just so empowering.
Yes.
So useful.
Yeah. Oh, cool. And it's just one of those ways that we can get to know ourselves a little bit better and learn about our strengths and how we can use, our innate gifts or the gifts we've picked up to do these amazing things and live these amazing lives and be who, I think we're created to be. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. It just really gives you the confidence, I think, to own what you are.
Yes.
Like when I learned that I had a healing stigmata, for example, which is located, just so you know, it's located under Mercury, and it's going to be 4 or more lines that are like lined up like little soldiers almost. So if you have that, that's called healing stigmata. It means you're a healer. Okay. And by the way, not all doctors are healers, which is interesting. But I got my start in a health store. It was a natural health store. And that's where I first started reading palms. And it was in Salt Lake City. And I was reading all the people in the store who worked there, and almost all of them had these healing stigmata marks. And I was starting to think, God, I didn't know this was so common. Because I was thinking, I have this, and every single person in this store pretty much has this. But it turns out it wasn't that. It was the environment.
Right.
It was so funny. So then when I started reading just like a bigger population, I learned, the healing stigmata is not that common.
So we should check our physicians' hands before we sign on.
Yeah, well, I would recommend that, but I mean, I'm one of those people who likes to do alternative healing first,
right?
And Western medicine second, or combine the two. I think is always good too, especially if you're facing something really serious. That's just my opinion, but check the healing marker.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I want to thank you so much, Cynthia, for talking with me today and being on this podcast and sharing your wisdom. And it's like, this is, like I say, I'm sort of a geek about this, and I just love hearing about this different way of knowing ourselves and being able to really stand in who we are and honor what we've been given, especially knowing that the fingerprints in particular are the soul imprint, and that this came to us before we were born. So that's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, hands are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know your podcast again is Love in Your Hands. And so I'd like to invite people to listen into that. But also, if you wouldn't mind sharing how people can reach you and how they might be able to work with you individually.
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, I've recently launched a new website, loveinyourhands.com, which matches you. It's actually a dating platform. Match you to long-lasting love using palmistry as the primary way to do it. Very innovative, and in my opinion, takes it way past the superficial junk. Mm-hmm. And by the way, you can find love at any age. I've seen people in their 80s who have found love again. So, you're never too old.
Right. I love that.
Yeah, you're never too old. Trust me. And I also work with people individually. So anybody interested in just discovering what their hand actually says, they can find me also at loveinyourhands.com or at worldofhands.com. I also do training. So if you're interested in learning how to read hands, it's one of the most amazing tools ever to actually help people. So regardless of what kind of healing modality you do, or you can add palmistry as something to do as well. Mm-hmm. It just augments your practice. And I've got a couple of different certifications that I do with people.
Great. So, and can that be, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can that be done virtually or remotely? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Great. I do all my work remotely.
Okay.
So yeah, I work with people all over the world in all of these ways. So
great.
You don't have to come to Sedona, but you're certainly welcome to.
Welcome to.
So yeah, my email is cynthia@loveinyourhands.com. And just go to either of those websites. I've got a bunch of free stuff too. So if you go explore, I've got some free reports, and
wonderful.
You can even get started in the dating site for free. So it's really fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was going to say, too bad I'm not single, but I don't really mean
that. No, I'm sure you don't.
I don't. I hope he doesn't hear that. Anyway, well, thank you so much for joining me today, Cynthia. I am so thrilled to connect again, and look forward to hanging out more.
Great.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and I look forward to talking with you or hearing from you in the near future. Love and blessings to all. Take care. Bye-bye. You've been listening to the She Moves Mountains podcast, coming to you every week. If you're a woman who wants to move mountains in your own life, please make sure to subscribe or follow this podcast. And if you've laughed or gotten teary or smiled knowingly thinking, oh yeah, that's me too, please go ahead and rate the episode with 5 stars. It'll be a feel-good thing to do. Thanks a bunch. Lots of love and blessings to you. This is Kamala signing off. Until next week. Take care.